So you've decided to dive into these resources on learning strategies. That's awesome, getting ready to level up your learning.
I think you're going to be surprised by some of these.
Yeah, I have a feeling some of these techniques are going to be really surprising. To help us unpack all this, we've got an expert here to break down the science and give us those aha moments.
I'm really excited to dive in, and by the end of this, I think you'll walk away with a whole toolkit of strategies to improve your learning, no matter what it is you're trying to learn.
One thing that really struck me in these sources, especially in Andrew Huberman's work, is the huge emphasis on sleep. We all know sleep is important, but he calls it the best nootropic.
There's a good reason for that. It's not just about feeling rested. Sleep, particularly deep sleep and REM sleep, is when your brain consolidates memories and makes those neural connections stronger.
So it's like Vandover. While you're sleeping, your brain is doing a save operation, making sure you don't lose all that new information you took in during the day.
Exactly. During NREM sleep, your brain is replaying and strengthening recently learned information. And during REM sleep, it's integrating that information with your existing knowledge and creating long-term memories.
It's not just about the quantity, but the quality of sleep too. Making sure you're getting enough of those crucial deep sleep cycles. I'm thinking back to all those times I sacrificed sleep to cram for an exam. Maybe not the best strategy.
You're catching on quickly. Consistently shortchanging your sleep really hinders your brain's ability to learn and retain information.
Sleep is non-negotiable, but these sources also mention therapy as a key element of what they call mental fitness. Is it really that important for learning?
Well, think of it this way. A stressed brain is not a receptive brain. Therapy can provide tools to manage that stress, process emotions, develop resilience, all of which indirectly enhance learning. It's about creating a mental environment that's conducive to absorbing and retaining information.
So therapy, not just for crisis situations, but also for proactively building mental strength and flexibility, which then supports better learning.
That's the idea. Now, are you ready to have some deeply held beliefs challenge?
Always. Hit me with it.
Okay. Prepare yourself. Those learning styles we've all heard about, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, research by prominent psychologists like Daniel Willingham shows they are largely a myth.
Wait, seriously, I always thought I was a visual learner because I love using diagrams and mind maps.
It's a common misconception, while you might have preferences for how you engage with information. The real key, according to these sources, is active engagement, regardless of the medium.
So it's not about finding the right way to learn based on some predetermined style, but rather about taking an active role in processing the information, not just passively reading or listening, but truly engaging with the material.
Precisely. Think of it like exercise. Watching a workout video won't get you in shape. You need to actively participate. Lift those weights, get your heart rate up. The same principle applies to learning.
That makes so much sense. It's not about being a spectator. It's about being an active participant in the learning process.
Exactly. And this is where the fascinating concept of neuroplasticity comes into play.
Okay, neuroplasticity. Sounds kind of intimidating.
It's actually quite simple. Neuroplasticity is your brain's incredible ability to rewire itself based on your experiences, what you learn.
So every time I learn something new, my brain is literally changing its physical structure.
You got it.
Yeah.
You're constantly forming new connections between neurons, strengthening existing pathways, and even pruning away connections that are no longer serving you.
That's wild. So even forgetting plays a role in this whole neuroplasticity thing.
Absolutely. Forgetting isn't always a bad thing. It's part of how the brain optimizes itself, clearing out the clutter to make room for new information and strengthen the connections that matter most.
So it's like decluttering your mental hard drive, getting rid of old files to free up space for new ones.
That's a great analogy, and this brings us to one of the most powerful, yet often overlooked learning strategies: testing.
Testing, I thought that's just for proving what you know, not necessarily for learning it better.
That's where things get interesting. Research, like the groundbreaking study by Henry Roediger and Jeffrey Karpik in 2006, has consistently shown that testing yourself, even if you get answers wrong, dramatically improves retention.
Really? So even if I bomb a quiz, it's actually helping me learn in the long run?
Yes. Testing forces your brain to actively retrieve information, which strengthens the neural pathways associated with that knowledge. It's like a workout for your memory.
So all those times I avoided quizzes, because I was afraid of failing, I was actually doing myself a disservice.
It seems so. The key takeaway here is to embrace testing as a learning tool, not just an assessment tool.
Wow, that's a real paradigm shift. I'm starting to see how these strategies all connect. Sleep sets the stage for optimal brain function. Therapy equips you with the mental tools for effective learning. Active engagement ensures you're not just passively absorbing information. And testing, even when you get things wrong, strengthens those neural pathways. It's like building a solid foundation for learning success.
That's a fantastic summary. And before we move on to even more powerful strategies, I'm curious to know, what's resonating with you so far? Is there anything that's particularly surprising or challenging your existing beliefs about learning?
I'm right there with you. It's amazing how much we think we know about learning, but there's a whole science behind it that can help us become much more effective learners.
We'll be right back to delve deeper into some additional strategies that can truly optimize your learning journey.
Welcome back. So we've laid a pretty solid foundation by exploring the importance of sleep, mental well-being, active engagement, and the surprising power of testing. Now let's dive into another fascinating aspect of effective learning.
Great.
Motivation.
Yeah, I used to think motivation was this fleeting thing, like a burst of energy that comes and goes. But these sources, especially the insights from behavioral psychologists, suggest it's much more about cultivating a sense of purpose. Yeah, that's a great point. It's less about waiting for inspiration to strike and more about connecting your learning to a larger goal. These sources highlighted a fascinating study on high-achieving med students. What set them apart wasn't just intelligence or good study habits, but a strong sense of purpose. They could really link their daily grind to a bigger why.
So it's not just about acing that next exam, but about understanding how those smaller steps contribute to a larger, more meaningful goal.
Exactly. It's about finding that intrinsic motivation, the personal meaning and relevance in what you're learning. This intrinsic drive can be incredibly powerful, especially when you face those inevitable moments of frustration or boredom.
That makes a lot of sense. Like if you're passionate about sustainability, learning about renewable energy sources might feel less like a chore and more like a crucial step towards making a real difference in the world.
Exactly. Connecting your learning to your values and aspirations can make it feel less like an obligation and more like a journey of personal growth and fulfillment. And this brings us to another intriguing concept, the different levels of understanding.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these levels.
One of the sources described a progression from unskilled to skilled, then to mastery, and ultimately to virtuosity.
Virtuosity, that sounds almost superhuman, like the level of a world-renowned musician or athlete.
It is inspiring to think about, isn't it? Virtuosity implies not only mastery of a skill, but also an exceptional level of creativity, innovation, and intuition.
So while reaching virtuosity is a fantastic aspiration, perhaps a more realistic and still incredibly valuable goal for most of us is to strive for mastery in the areas that we're truly passionate about.
I think that's a healthy perspective. Recognizing that learning is a journey, not just a destination, can take the pressure off and allow you to embrace the process of growth and development.
It's about progress over perfection. And speaking of progress, these sources dive deep into a strategy that completely changes the game when it comes to making that progress stick. Spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition is truly a game changer. It's based on the idea that strategically timing your review sessions can significantly boost retention. Instead of cramming all your studying into one massive session, you space it out over time.
So instead of trying to cram all that information about the French Revolution into my brain the night before the exam, I should be revisiting the material at specific intervals over a longer period.
Precisely. The research is really clear on this. By spacing out your study sessions, you're essentially giving your brain the opportunity to forget some of the information and then forcing it to work harder to retrieve it.
It's like giving your memory a workout. The harder your brain has to work to recall something, the stronger those neural connections become.
That's a great analogy. And the beauty of spaced repetition is that it works with any type of information. Facts, dates, vocabulary, even physical skills.
So are there specific time intervals that have been shown to be most effective for spaced repetition?
Research suggests that reviewing material shortly after you learn it, then again after a day, then a week, and so on, can significantly improve long-term retention. There are even systems like the Leitner system, which use flashcards and algorithms to automatically signal your reviews based on your performance.
That's amazing. It takes the guesswork out of spaced repetition and ensures you're reviewing the material at the optimal intervals for your brain.
I'm starting to see how all these strategies work together to create a truly powerful learning system.
It's like building a well-oiled machine, where each component works in synergy to optimize performance. But before we move on to the next set of insights, I'd love to hear from you, the listener. What are your initial thoughts? On spaced repetition, does it feel like a strategy you could incorporate into your own learning routine?
We've covered a lot of ground, but I have a feeling this next concept is going to tie everything together beautifully.
You're talking about interleaving, right? It's a technique that can really enhance your learning. Exactly. It's been mentioned a few times in these sources, and I'm really intrigued by it. It almost sounds like the mental equivalent of cross-training.
That's a great way to think about it. Instead of focusing on one subject or skill for an extended period, interleaving involves switching between different topics or tasks during your study session.
So rather than spending 3 hours straight practicing Spanish vocab, I might alternate between vocabulary, grammar, and listening comprehension exercises.
Exactly. By mixing things up, you're challenging your brain to make connections between different concepts and preventing it from getting stuck in a rut.
So you're forcing your brain to work a little harder, which ultimately leads to deeper understanding and better retention.
Exactly. And research has shown that interleaving can be particularly effective for subjects that involve problem solving or applying knowledge in different contexts.
This reminds me of something else that's been a recurring theme in these sources: the importance of finding creative ways to test yourself. It's not just about rote memorization or regurgitating facts, but about actively engaging with material and finding ways to apply it.
Absolutely. One of the sources, a book on learning strategies, suggested turning testing into a game. For example, if you're learning a new language, you could create flashcards with pictures and try to guess the corresponding words. Or if you're studying history, you could create a timeline and challenge yourself to place events in the correct order.
Those are great examples. It's about making testing fun and engaging, rather than something to be dreaded. And this ties back to the idea of finding your why, that intrinsic motivation that fuels your learning journey.
It all comes full circle. When you connect your learning to your passions and goals, it becomes much easier to embrace these strategies and make them part of your routine.
I think that's a fantastic note to end on. We've explored such a wide range of strategies, from the foundational importance of sleep and mental well-being to the power of active engagement, spaced repetition, interleaving, and finding creative ways to test yourself. It's like a comprehensive toolkit for effective learning.
And the best part is, these strategies can be adapted to any subject or skill you're passionate about. It's about empowering yourself to become a lifelong learner, constantly expanding your knowledge and pushing your boundaries.
Before we sign off, I want to remind our listeners that we've just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic. If you're eager to dive deeper into the science of learning, Andrew Huberman's work is an excellent resource. His Huberman Lab podcast and website offer a wealth of information, including specific protocols and techniques for optimizing your cognitive performance.
It's a treasure trove of knowledge for anyone who's serious about maximizing their learning potential.
So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and most importantly, keep learning. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new topic. Until then, happy learning.